Money Vikings, welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me. And I have a very interesting one for you today. It's about designing and utilizing your home and your space for maximum wealth building. And so, this conversation, I'm going to throw out about 6 or 7 tips and ideas. But the main point of this conversation is about thinking about how your environment is either setting you up for success or setting you up for failure or setting you up for mediocrity, and really being intentional about it. Because I think it's pretty clear that the research is out. Our environment affects how we feel, how we function, and how productive we are. It doesn't mean that people can't thrive and rise out of the ashes of an unhealthy environment. And there's many cases of that happening. But there's also many cases of people succumbing to the bottom level of their environment. And so I want to talk about that today. Please do consider subscribing and signing up for our newsletter. We aim a few times a week to be your personal financial coach, or one of them, in your true wealth journey. And that's our whole aim and goal. So if you get any kind of value out of our videos and our content, please consider liking and subscribing. We'd really appreciate it. And it just motivates us to continue to put out, we want to be positive. We want to be straightforward and rational. I don't want this to be sensational information. We try to do our research, and we want to put out ideas into the world that can really help people live a life of what we call true wealth, where you're getting your investing, your personal finance, your relationships, and your health all coming together into something that really creates a better life for you. So with that, let's talk environment. So how do we set ourselves up for success with our environment? So the first thing I guess I'll throw out there is our physical environment. Look around, and I understand some people thrive in different environments. I have met people over the years that tend to thrive in a chaotic environment with papers and stacks of things all over the place. And if that's part of your true wealth ethos and that works for you, then I'm not one to say anything about it. But at the same time, I've also seen examples where when people just generally have a very disorganized environment, or a type of hoarding environment, that really impacts their ability to build wealth. Number one, a hoarding environment is probably akin to a greater psychological problem and a mindset of scarcity, right? So it's always good to be frugal, where you're putting your resources into your highest priorities. We talk a lot about that here. But at the same time, there's a extreme of everything. And so when hoarding happens, there's a sense that, there's always famine around the corner. And I don't know if this leads to really a true wealth life, because, a person is not aligning their resources with their highest priorities and values. And that's what we want to strive for, at least in our definition of a true wealth life. So the first thing is assessing your physical environment. I recently we went through ours and did some organizing, some cleaning. You want to divide things up. Sometimes you're selling a few things. Sometimes you're taking a bunch of stuff to donations and you're giving it away, which really helps the economy, and it helps people who maybe don't have the resources. And so if they can pick up things at a thrift store, I love thrift stores, but if they can pick stuff up at a thrift store for a lower cost, maybe that helps someone who's having a hard time get the professional work clothing they need to up themselves in their job, or to climb that career ladder a little bit more. Or maybe it just helps them to clothe their children, or whatever it might be. So a lot of that's really important. And big believer in the Buy Nothing groups. Those have been awesome community bonding there, and a way to reduce waste and to reduce everyone's costs if we're sharing. So I would just say, take stock of your physical environment. Is it organized? I've also found that when the physical environment is disorganized, there's many examples where people will go out and rebuy something that they actually have, because they just don't know what's piled in the corner of the garage, into that mountain high pile of stuff, or they don't know what's all loaded up in the shed, or even a storage unit that just gets jumbled and filled with stuff. So really going through physical items and assessing, is it really something that you're going to utilize? Is it something you need to keep around, or can you somehow sell it or donate it to help someone else down the line? So that's number one. I really think that also having an organized physical environment helps us think more clearly. There's a big issue nowadays with attention span. So people have a really hard time. We're getting induced by the TikToks and the swiping, and that is affecting our brains. And I think that's affecting our ability to focus. And a certain amount of focus, I think, is required to build wealth and to make good investing decisions and good overall decisions, either at work, personal finance, or your relationships. So I'll just throw it out there as the first one is really assessing your physical environment. The second part of that I'll talk about is, what are you bringing into your physical environment in terms of nutrition and foods? Are you assessing your cabinetry for, is it just filled with a bunch of cheap junk food that's going to be able to grab at easily? Or are you really stocking it with more nutrient dense, higher quality foods that are better for your body and your brain? And ultimately better for your wealth building. So that's the second area that I would assess is the cupboards and the refrigerator. So how's that all looking? So that's number two. The third thing I would assess in terms of your environment is who you're surrounding yourself with. Are you surrounding yourself with friends and family who have a sense of your best interests at heart, have a sense of love and connection, have a sense of communication? Are they communicating with you in a healthy way? Now, no one's perfect, and I actually think that almost all relationships at some point and people require some kind of outside therapy or someone they can talk with, because I think that's just really important for all people. And a lot of times we misunderstand each other. So, but I would just ask you to assess your relationships. I mean, there's perfect examples, if you're surrounded by a bunch of people that are just partying and drinking all the time, well, that's what you're going to be doing. And that's going to have deleterious health effects and other effects. So, just think about what you're talking about. Is it high quality information? Is it helping each other? Is it supporting each other, uplifting each other, etc.? So that's number three. The fourth thing I wanted to mention is organizing all of your financials. So are things that you is your paperwork for like your taxes, is that all organized properly? Is all of your investment information organized properly? Because all that's going to make a difference as well. There's a lot of sort of paperwork in the modern era in terms of taxes and investments, all stuff. And do you have a good system for keeping that all organized coherently when you will need it? And then are you actually disposing of things at the proper time? We don't need to keep that stuff forever. And some of those things after a certain amount of time, and there's certain guidelines for that you can look up, but there's certain guidelines for when you can dispose of that stuff and get that physical paperwork out of your space and even the electronic waste. So there's all that. The fifth thing I'll mention is, are you organizing properly for automation? So we talk a lot about how automating certain things into personal finance really set us up for success because it takes the human flawed part out of the equation. And so assess those automation systems, and are those all set up in an organized and coherent fashion? The final thing I'll leave you with is a kind of connected to that. What can you engineer in your life so that you, again, are set up for success? I think of a story of someone years ago who, for example, wanted to, what I'm saying is that certain environments are built more for success. So they talk about blue zones. Well, those people, they tend to walk more because they have to walk. They tend to socialize more because they're built into their community or aspects of socializing. It tends to have a culture that has access to healthy, nutritiously dense foods. And so are you thinking of ways that you can engineer your microenvironment for greater health and wealth down the line? I knew a person years ago that wanted to lose a little weight or wanted to get healthier. And so they just made it a habit. Habits are important, but they made it a habit of always, when they went to the store, they'd park in the everybody always looks for the closest spot. Well, they ended up parking in the farthest spot. And what ended up happening is they walked more, because they just said, hey, let me find the furthest spot in the parking lot, and I'll add that many steps to my day. That's a really good example of engineering your life for more success. So those are kind of big six right there. And please leave comments of ways that you design your home environment and your life for wealth and health. I'm sure there's a lot of great ideas out there, plants, gardening, all that kind of stuff. And, a lot of this stuff can be done without a lot of money on a tight budget. So that's the good thing. A lot of this is free. So thanks a lot for joining, and talk with you later. Bye.